and hope that having these massive killing machines is going to keep us from killing each other. That's what mad is all about, and I guess you'd have to be pretty mad, as in crazy, in order to buy into that thinking that, uh, you know, having all these weapons of mass destruction, these killing machines, will keep us from killing each other. There's a certain irony to that, and we may soon find out that that thinking is a total failure. Just like after World War I, we assumed that people wouldn't let things get that bad, and we didn't proactively take steps to make sure things wouldn't get that bad. And then we had World War II, and we learned that lesson, and we took proactive steps to keep things from getting that bad again. But uh, while it was only 21 years from the end of World War I to the beginning of World War II, it's now been 77 years since the end of World War II. So it did work for a while, but it looks like we're about to get into World War III, and well, I am, by the way, on my second video. The second video started almost 3 minutes ago. But so here we are. We learned a lesson that kept us from having another world war 21 years after the end of World War II. We've lasted almost 4 times as long without another world war, but it seems like even the system that we created to prevent a third world war is beginning to fall apart. The fissures in the system are being exposed. The weak spots are being exposed, and that world order is beginning to collapse. And so let me see. What have I not mentioned? Okay, so Russia has over 6,000 nukes. I do recall a woman on ABC's this week saying they have 4,000, but either way you go. What I looked up said that Russia had over 6,000 nukes, that the U.S. has about 5,500, and that about another 2,000 or so are spread between at least 6 countries. And so no matter how you slice it, the U.S. and Russia each have several thousand nuclear warheads, and then the next nation after that is a distant third. Okay, so it really boils down to this idea that these two nuclear powers, the U.S. and Russia, could end up going head to head, and I don't see where any other nation is really going to be all that anxious to get into a nuclear conflict, especially if they see that Russia and the U.S. are the first two nations to get into that nuclear conflict. The other nuclear nations are not going to want to join into that conflict. But anyway, so Russia has 4,000 or 6,000 nukes, somewhere in there. I've even seen stuff that said they may have just under 7,000 nukes. And the U.S. has about 5,500. And so it's down to the two big boys. Yeah, and so let me see. Well, so when you narrow down to these two big boys, and everyone else is pretty much irrelevant because their nuclear arsenals are so much smaller, and so when a nuclear conflict becomes a reality, then it's really just the U.S. versus Russia. Okay, and so that said, Putin's willingness to use nukes could give him the victory. That could make him the de facto world ruler. because he's willing to be brutal. I mean, if you got two ginormous guys, they're both as big as a young Lou Ferrigno who played the Incredible Hulk. But one guy is real sweet and wouldn't hurt a fly, and the other guy is a total brute. I mean, he's got like 5 violent crimes against him, and you're wondering why this guy hasn't been locked up for life. Okay, so these two guys end up getting into an argument, and you see where it could get ugly. Well, the brute that has the 5 violent crimes under his belt already is likely to pummel the other guy. And even though they're of similar size, by one guy being so sweet, he's probably going to lose. Okay, and so if Biden is too sweet to go up against Putin, then Putin is going to end up winning because Putin just has to fire off maybe 2 nukes. He can or nuke 2 locations. Maybe he has to use 5 nukes per city in 2 different cities. Maybe he'll nuke Kiev, Ukraine, and maybe he'll also nuke Brussels, Belgium, which is where NATO is headquartered. Okay, it's also where the SWIFT banking system is headquartered. And so he may just go ahead and nuke those 2 locations, and people see that he's crazy enough to go there because he's gone there. And they say, we don't want to have a worldwide nuclear war. And then they begin to realize we didn't think this through. We built up all these nukes and we built up other defenses. And we hoped that having these nukes would keep us from ever having a nuclear conflict. But now Russia has fired off all these nukes. What do we do now? Do we fire back with nukes? Do we fire back with other types of weapons? Because when we fire back, Russia is bound to fire more nukes. And so even if we don't use our nuclear arsenal to fight against Russia, then Russia may just fire off more nukes, and Putin may show that he's more brutal than Biden, and his military is more brutal than Biden's military, and his military is more brutal than the entirety of NATO's military, and so this could be the reason that Vladimir Putin wins. And I think that Vladimir Putin just kind of knows that he might lose this or that battle, but that as soon as he feels like it's time to pull out the nukes, he knows he's going to win, okay? And he has teased us a little bit. His forces captured the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. His forces captured the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. He shut off power to Chernobyl so that they don't have enough electricity to cool the nuclear element. And so that could lead to a nuclear cloud getting out and killing people for miles around. His forces actually fired at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. They didn't actually hit a nuclear reactor. They hit an administrative building. And so Putin has kind of teased us a little bit and made us feel like he might just go all the way there. And I think he knows that just showing his willingness to create a nuclear incident is enough to make us back off and say, we don't want to push this guy any further. He really means business. He's willing to destroy the entire world if he can't keep NATO out of Ukraine. Okay, so he asked for what he feels like is a little bit. Just, hey, Ukraine, don't join NATO. And because we won't comply, because we won't oblige, he's saying, okay, then since you won't give me that little bit, I'm going to take it all. And I'm willing to blow the entire world into oblivion, to nuke the entire world into oblivion if you won't just keep NATO out of Ukraine. Okay. And so, yeah. He has shown his willingness to go there, and so just like we went back to the old violent boyfriend, the alliances that led to World War I. Now we've got a new violent boyfriend, uh, and his name is Vladimir Putin, and he is showing that he is willing to go there. Like I say, he's teased us with some nuclear incidents, or not really incidents, but he's teased us with some nuclear whatever you want to call it. No nuclear elements have escaped that I know of. But yeah, he's teased us a little bit, and so now people are really wondering, and all the pundits are asking, is he a rational actor? And how far is he willing to go? And they really don't know. But it's given them pause. And not just the pundits, but even the politicians. It's given them pause. And so, long story short, we know that alliances are not the answer. If alliances were the answer, we wouldn't have had World War I. Okay. But in closing, because I don't want to go into a third video, I'll say this. That by the end of 2022, or definitely by the end of 2025, we'll be completely through with World War III. It might not start in earnest this year. Okay. I think it will. I think that Vladimir Putin will fire off nukes before Easter, which this year falls on April 17th. But, I could be wrong. And that's why I said 2025 is the latest that I expect what I'm about to say to play out. Whenever World War III starts, I don't think that it will be even a full 3 months long. But I do see where we could hold off on the beginning of World War III so that it doesn't actually begin until sometime in 2025. But I'm saying probably at least an 80% chance that Putin will fire nukes before Easter of 2022. And it's probably at least an 80% chance that the entirety of World War III will be over by Father's Day of 2022. So about 2 months later. And I think that Putin, is in a position where he can bitch the entire world out. And of course he is human, and he will die, but he'll probably die of natural causes. So he's probably going to bitch out the entire world by showing his willingness to fire nukes. And the only nation with enough nukes to compete with him, if that makes any sense, is the United States. And I question that making any sense, only because it would take a lot less than 5,500 nukes to destroy the entire world population. So it would probably just take a few hundred nukes to destroy the entire world population. But Russia and the US each have thousands. Anyway, I'm guessing that we will begin World War III by April 17th of this year, Easter, and I'm guessing we will finish it by Father's Day. I'm not sure what date that falls on, but it's in the third week of June, and third Sunday in June. And then when it's over, I'm thinking that probably less than 25 nukes will have been fired. And the totality of those 25 nukes, some of them having missed their targets, but probably will have killed in the neighborhood of 10 million to 25 million people in Europe. Okay. And when that happens, then yeah, we'll have the nuclear fallout for miles and miles around. But I think that people will be so anxious to stop the annihilation of the world that they'll be willing to do whatever Putin wants as long as he stops firing nukes, and their whimpering will essentially make him the world ruler, and he'll probably die within 15 years, maybe 20 from natural causes. He turned 70 in October of 2022. And some of these guys live very long. Mugabe was like 95 when he died. Reagan was in his 90s when he died. And so I kind of see Putin dying of natural causes, and I kind of see him getting his way until that time comes. And I see where he may even make the United States dismantle its nukes and say, you know, all that fucking disarmament you did over the years is coming back to bite you. I'm going to disarm you of all of your nukes, okay? And I'm going to be the only nation that has thousands of nukes, okay? And so he may actually go there. But, you know, I'll make this the very last thing I say. So some people like to talk about David versus Goliath. Anytime you have this smaller nation like Pakistan versus India, or Ukraine versus Russia, like to say, oh, the small guy is going to win. David beat Goliath, you know. But sometimes, you know, you got to remember that there's this other story in the Bible where big bad Babylon, headed by King Nebuchadnezzar, defeated little Israel, and I believe that king at that time was Zedekiah, and so God, through his prophets, had said, hey, you know, through his prophet Jeremiah, had said, don't fight Babylon. Babylon is going to win. Babylon might be the bad guy, and Israel might be my chosen people, but Babylon is going to win. Don't fight Babylon. Well, he didn't listen. Israel was defeated, and so King Nebuchadnezzar said, okay, kill this guy's two sons. Kill Zedekiah's sons. And right after his sons were killed, Zedekiah's eyes were gouged out. So the last thing he saw was his sons being killed. Okay, and so, yeah, and Big Bad Babylon did, in fact, win. And so, yeah, we got to remember that. And I see where Biden isn't going to know when to, well, I shouldn't say Biden, but NATO as a whole isn't going to know when to back down, and they're going to think that because they got the U.S. as part of NATO, because they got the U.S. on their side, that they're going to win, but then they're going to get into a fight that they can't win, and they're going to be subverted by Vladimir Putin, okay? And it's not because I like Putin, you know, it's just reality, you know, and I'm just being realistic about what I think is going to happen. But there you have it, what I have to say about World War III. All right, I'm going to leave it right there.